I haven't filmed a video on my bed in a while. So here's a video on my bed. This is gonna be a long one, so strap in. Notice the freaking Freddy Fazbear Mega Pizzaplex poster in the background. I want to get it out of the way that I do not hate this game, let alone the franchise that it comes from. This essay is coming from a genuine place of love and admiration. And I also want to start us off by saying I mean absolutely no hate or anything for the truly astonishing piece of art that this game is. I can't even dream of being able to make anything like it, even in its launch state. I struggle to edit a YouTube video, let alone make a 20-hour long video game experience. The 20-hour long video game experience that I'm talking about is, of course, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Part 1, Developmental Issues. Right off the bat, this game had issues. Scott Cawthon, the lead director of the story of Five Nights at Freddy's these games, and one of maybe 15 people at the very most who know the real and true story of Five Nights at Freddy's, was canceled in 2020, and so had to take more of a backseat role when telling Steel Wool what to do with Security Breach. But the problem stretched back to probably before 2020, but we're gonna just say that he was canceled. And probably Scott Cawthon and his immediate family and the two people at the top from Steel Wool and Matt Pat are probably the only people that know definitely what the story of FNAF is. So Scott tells Steel Wool, before he tells them the whole story of FNAF, by the way, he tells Steel Wool these breadcrumbs to put across the game for astute players to find. But Steel Wool misunderstood the assignment to a major degree and thought they were the ones that were supposed to be tying the breadcrumbs together. Which is understandable, which is an understandable game to make, considering they have to make this, a game. This isn't your grandfather's FNAF game. It's got to have a plot and a consistent through line and character arcs and maybe intersect or at worst interfere with the breadcrumbs. The literal creator of this game franchise told you specifically what to put in this game. This is how we got the first problem of the game, the so-called Freddy Spaghetti. They threw everything at the wall to see what stuck, because that's basically what they thought they were supposed to do. And the development issues did not stop at the story of the game. No. It kept going into the actual game itself, because people were trying to predict what was going to happen in Security Breach. And one person by the name of Matthew Patrick predicted it so well that they postponed the game to try and have surprises in it. To have surprises in the game. And then Matt Pat predicted what would happen in the game again. And they postponed the game again until the promised release date of 2020 became late 2021. And they were working on the game until the end of the line. The day of launch. The bitter end. Part 2. The game. So, let me paint you a pretty picture, alright? It's December 2021, and Security Breach has just released to the public. And immediately, it is the most buggy mess that has ever come across the screens of FNAF fans. This game is broken. Within a week, you could beat this game in like 5 minutes by doing out of bounds parkour to the Vanny ending. We'll get to that in a minute. But not only was the gameplay polish bad, literally everything about the game made no sense. It was more of a slapdash, ramshackle affair of a game that was poorly made and poorly told. Let's get into it, shall we? So, a quick summary of the game is needed. So, in this game, you play as this kid named Gregory, and you're trapped in the Freddy Fazbear Mega Pizzaplex after hours. And you have to try and find your way out. You go to the daycare, and you upgrade your security clearance, but the lights go out, and the Happy Sun daycare attendant turns into Scary Moon daycare attendant, so you go around the play place and turn on all the 5 generators, and then you get kicked out by the sun. And so you go from place to place in the Pizzaplex, finding badges and finding little collectibles and upgrades and stuff, while eluding all of the animatronics and getting security passes to access deeper into the Pizzaplex, until you're faced with the choice either to go to Phaser Blast or Monty Golf. If you choose Phaser Blast, you'll go down the road to murder Chica. If you choose Monty Golf, you go down the route to murder Monty. You upgrade Freddy in parts and service after Vanessa locks him up. And I kind of forgot to mention, but Vanessa also locks you up, but it doesn't really matter. All it serves in the game to do is to give you the screwdriver. That's kind of it. With either you upgrade Freddy in parts and service with either Chica's voice box that opens certain gates, or Monty's claws that will also open certain gates. Either one you go for, it opens the gates to Roxy Raceway, where you will be tasked with getting Roxy's eyes to upgrade Freddy again. You have to go all the way to the East Arcade, and possibly get murdered by the gigantic Music Man thing, until you repair the Robo Head, to have a driver assist bot to run over Roxy. After escaping the after escaping Roxy Raceway with Roxy's eyes, you upgrade Freddy one final time, and you've reached 6 a.m. You can leave, and it triggers one of the 6 security breach endings. Now, it's not unheard of for a FNAF game to have a lot of endings. Heck, FNAF 6 had 7 endings, and World had 6 endings, and now Security Breach has 6 endings. But I'm telling you, man, every ending in this game is weak and has basically nothing to do with the actual game. Part 2.5, the endings. So, ending number 1, the escape ending. You just kind of go out of the Pizzaplex and learn that Gregory is homeless, and then he gets killed by Vanny, who tracked him out of the Pizzaplex. Ending 2, the fire escape ending. This is the ending where you burn the entire place down, and Freddy tackles Vanny off the roof, and then we unmask to reveal Vanny is Vanessa. And then we see Vanessa as a spirit on top of the Pizzaplex. What? Ending 3, the truck escape. This is kind of a funny ending, to be honest with you. It's the ending where you get in the truck with Freddy and Gregory drives it out of the Pizzaplex. And he's like 13 years old at most in this game. He's probably more like 8 or 9 probably, I don't know. Ending 4, the disassemble Vanny ending. This is the ending I was talking about earlier that you could get in like 5 minutes, like from day 1. So you go to Vanny's secret hideout in Phaser Blast and hit this button that turns the Sapbots against Vanny and literally tear her to pieces. Gore! Ending 5, the sinkhole. We will get back to this, but I'm telling you this like it's the first time you've ever played a FNAF game. So you get all the upgrades. You go down the path that you didn't choose earlier. You either didn't choose Phaser Blast or Monty Golf, and you go down that path. Well, now it's time to do the path. And you have all the upgrades now, and there's a sinkhole under Roxy Raceway, and there's this shaky elevator that you can only do a one-way trip now. You come face to face with a different pizzeria, and going down more into this sinkhole in Freddy, you'll get a little speech from him saying, "I am not me." And then you get a boss fight with this yellow rabbit thing. After you defeat it, this tangle of wires comes down and takes the yellow rabbit thing away. What was all that about? If you're playing this as your first FNAF game, if you've never heard of FNAF before and this is your first FNAF game, I don't know what this is about. The ending number 6, the Princess Quest ending. In this ending, you go around the Pizzaplex playing these Princess Quest arcade cabinets. The last one being in Vanny's hideout from earlier. And you free Vanny. And this ending is 3 stars, implying that it's probably the true ending. All of these endings, but 2 of them, include Vanny in some way, shape, or form. A whopping 80% of the endings. But did you notice how during the summary of the game, I did not mention Vanny once, and I mentioned Vanessa very shortly in passing? It's because she basically never shows up in the game. There are like 3 or 4 or 5 instances of Vanny in the game, and none of them are majorly important to the plot. They really just exist. They really just exist to exist. And when Vanessa shows up to either give Freddy or you a stern talking to, the way Vanny was fumbled in this game is absolutely insane. The marketing hyped her up as, the next big villain, only for her not only to not be the next big villain, but actually just be this fumble of a character in general, not even like a character in the game, really. The actual next big thing was something else that we'll get to, and it was not very well received by the community at large. But that is for later. But all of these endings are unsatisfying except for 2. One was the sinkhole ending, because you go down and you defeat what is a villain, maybe. From a pure gameplay standpoint, but from a pure gameplay standpoint, it's just not a climactic boss fight. But the Princess Quest ending is obviously the best ending for everyone. And it's even somewhat narratively satisfying for Vanessa to free herself from whatever was controlling her under the Vanny mask up till now. Up to this point in the video, I've only been saying what has been heavily implied or directly stated / shown in this game, with not any outer context from any books or any games. These are the things that are just in the game, plain as day. It's obvious to anybody that's in this game, Vanny is being controlled by something or another. So at this point, you might be thinking, sure, it was buggy and it kind of was unplayable at launch and the story was a little all over the place, but nothing here destroys anything like the title says. What if I told you I haven't even started talking about this game yet? I gave you just a very brief summary. This is where it gets into the meat and potatoes. Part 3, the lore. The Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach lore is so very confounding when you consider the past lore of Fazbear Entertainment. Fazbear Entertainment disbanded in Five Nights at Freddy's 6, and in Help Wanted, it came back as a different, smaller business, Fazbear Entertainment LLC. With a maximum number of probably only a couple hundred employees, which was enough to make the game of Help Wanted. And then, out of nowhere, they have enough money to build this giant mega mall. No, you could say FNAF AR was how they made the rest of the money, for sure, and I accept that. However, you can't even play that game anymore, so it doesn't. Is it even canon anymore? Does it even matter anymore? Who knows? I really don't know. But let's just say the indie games made by Steve Snodgrass, which is the name of the Rogue Indie Game developer from frickin' Help Wanted, right? The indie games, the merchandise, and maybe they made books. Fright's fiction could be real. Holla to Gibby for that one, guys. And the animatronic delivery service were as successful as they were in real life, but probably even more so because we just got announced IRL stuff for Freddy Fazbear's. But since Freddy's fucking business is more corrupt than Scott Cawthon, and B, they made they probably made as much money as IRL FNAF did, plus probably even more, is not an absolutely preposterous assumption to make, considering that back in 2015 in the games, people created Fazbear Frights, the FNAF 3 location, not the book series. So, there was clearly interest in the story of William Afton and Fazbear Entertainment, enough so that it came back via Henry to have Henry do what he did in FNAF 6, just so he can burn it all down. But I digress with FNAF lore. I'm sorry. We can assume that they made enough money for sure. But still, this big of a place is still a gigantic gamble. Even if they got a discount for building on top of a sinkhole and being on the same acres of land where murders, death, and fires happened, this would probably still be a gigantic gamble for an LLC, which Fazbear Entertainment is in this game. They probably had to put all of the money they earned into this project. And I'm not saying it's impossible. However, it's probably the biggest gamble ever. Legit putting all of your eggs into one basket. But, however, it does work. So who am I to say? But really, just scraping the surface of the lore issues in this game, hell, you could probably say that's not even really a problem at all. But really where the problems start is in the sinkhole. But before we get to that, there's this giant elephant in the room that you're probably asking me about this. What about the super weird reference to Michael Afton's room from the end of Sister Location that's in this room? So we don't know. We don't know if it's his room or not. But if you believe Fazburger, this makes at least a little bit more sense. But that theory only came into thought like last year. So it makes absolutely no sense when you're playing this in 2021 as a slightly lore-inclined player. And then the retro CDs. Vanessa got therapy, and we bring up stuff from AR like Lewis and how she was recommended for Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex. Does that mean they're canon? I don't know. It could have just happened differently, but I don't know. And Patient 46, who is it? We don't know. It's so vague. And why is it in the room from Sister Location? It makes zero sense by its own. But I alluded to the sinkhole earlier because it is the place. You show up into the sinkhole to fight this rotten rabbit, which we will get to. It's called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place. And this blob creature has created a hole. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place was the name of the Five Nights at Freddy's 6 location that apparently burned to the ground. But when you see this blob creature, it has animatronics from the other games with red eyes lit up. And we're almost there to why this is all bad. We've kind of alluded to it by the burning down, because now we get to the smoking gun, the nail in the coffin, the tolling of the bell, the rabbit thing. If this was your very first FNAF thing you ever consumed and you saw this, you'd be very confused. Why is this rabbit here? But if this is not the very first FNAF thing you've ever consumed, you will be absolutely infuriated to find out that William Afton is alive. Alright, here we go. Here's why this entire thing is like the worst decision they could have ever made for this game. The red eyes on the blob creature, they represent the spirits of the dead kids being still there. Why is that bad? Because Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place was burnt to the ground, setting all the spirits free. So not only is it here in this game, it's not burned or charred at all. And the spirits that were set free, allegedly, nope. They all became the blob tangle thing. Like, no, OMG. Look, I was behind having more games after FNAF 6, as long as they told their own story, and if they connected or tied to the full, not fully tied, but like still kind of connected to the older games lore. The decisions made for Help Wanted was good and even a little funny. But this, what the actual heck is going on? William Afton, doomed to death, somebody said to him, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. His old friend Henry Emily condemned him to hell. And now he's alive, coming out of a smoke charging pod like a car commercial. This is so dumb. First of all, he should be dead. Like full on, 100%, burnt to a crisp, there ain't no coming back. But here he is. Sure, the last time he was in a fire he survived, but that was a more small scale fire where it was easy to run out of because there were two very clearly marked exits. But this time, Henry legitimately says it is a labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. It should have not been possible for him to get out. He should be dead. Well, there is a theory to answer it all, but that's it. That's what it is. It's just a theory. And to be honest with you, it's kind of a cope theory, too. Either way, in 2021 at least, it was a cope theory. I would say it was a cope theory. At least I was behind Glitch Trap the concept. An AI mimicking William Afton and his actions because the AI learned to be evil, and the mimic learned from the cartoony purple guy from the indie games made by Fazbear Entertainment to make light of what happened in the real story. So that became Glitch Trap, and probably also like some chips from William Afton's real body probably also contributed for this AI to become Glitch Trap. And it evolved into the rabbit from Security Breach, and that was the theory I was talking about earlier. This is what I believe. As for the blob, it is connected to something in the future games. I will have to explain it at some point or another. But all of this, for somebody playing this game in 2021, all they know is that William Afton is alive and kicking in Freddy Fazbear's pizza place, which they thought was fake and just vents, and it was sounds and smells chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. When you played this game, you were like, everything that happened in FNAF 6 does not matter anymore, so you may as well not play it. Huh. You see how dumb this is, right? I hope I delivered it in a point where you were as mad as we were in 2021 as FNAF fans. There had not been an all-encompassing bad FNAF game in the series up to this point. FNAF 2 had fun gameplay to some, and it was random BS to others, but it wasn't an overall bad game. FNAF 3 had the scare factor taken out, but it was the second best lore of any game. Sister Location was basically the same way. There hadn't been a really super not good FNAF game to the date of December 5th, 2021 in the FNAF franchise. They got everything wrong in Security Breach. At least in the past games, if one thing was lacking, the other thing would pick it up. But in this, obviously in games there's more than just, lore and gameplay. And people liked this game because the characters had a personality. But honestly, I don't think that equals good game quality. It's just, they fumbled every part of this game. It's not written well. It's not, playable. And the lore is just so messed up. So now we've been leading into what the fandom reacted as. Here is the aftermath, part 4. The fandom exploded, and that is a double entendre, because we had a huge influx of new FNAF fans because kids were connecting with Freddy Fazbear all over again. And it was even in a bigger wave than 2014 because TikTok had its influence on neurodivergent youth. But the older people in this franchise exploded because this game was absolutely terrible. And people even got doxxed and canceled for this, for simply holding an opinion. This influx of toxicity influenced the Living Tombstone to make their first FNAF song in very many years, with the hotly controversial "This Comes From Inside." Get out of my room, Aubrey. I'm doing a video right now. A song that was supposed to tell people to stop being so toxic, but instead was the jumping off point for many toxic arguments about the FNAF games and how they should have ended at 6 because they're worse now. This is a terrible game. I disagree. However, it was, I disagree with the thing that people said that it should have ended at 6, but it was the easiest time in history to make that claim that FNAF should have ended at 6. Because Security Breach was so obviously bad that even the most diehard Freddyers of all time, it has made this FNAF, this toxic landscape, Security Breach has. Because people that showed up to hate on it, like Fiznom, have stayed in the minds of FNAF fans everywhere. It was the first toxic stream that split the FNAF land in two, and us theorists had to pick up the pieces of this broken mess of a game. Of course, MatPat was not long for this world and got hate for simply stating a fact that we know that we probably even knew back then as somewhat true. Gregory is some kind of echo of CC Cassidy Crying Child Afton. But it was at the time the worst possible combination because it was basically like Sans' Ness, but even worse because it was with a game that had even more of a bad fan base. And I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Pat's first thoughts of retirement started to infiltrate his mind after Gregbot blew up in his face, right? So sadly, it was thanks to a misunderstood song and a terrible game and the fallout of some people that left the FNAF franchise because it became too toxic for the fandom. It was easy before, but now it's so big, and now they've lost love. You've been blinded by stardom. That's what people thought that the song was saying, but it was something different, okay? Part 5, Tales from the Pizzaplex. The healing period of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach begins. So fast forward a little, and we get this anthology book series that is like Fazbear Frights called Tales from the Pizzaplex. It would end up being an 8-book series that would introduce to us something called The Mimic. But also, it would answer some security breach related questions like, who is patient 46? It was Gregory, most likely. But I'm telling you, man, the people thought these books were probably more canonical than Fazbear Frights. Still not entirely canon, but somewhat canon. And some people thought it was freaking 100,000% canon. At least especially focused on was the Mimic. It seemed like a cool books villain, you know. It was kind of a cool books villain that was in the books, you know. Well, part 5.5, Five Nights at Freddy's Ruin. Welcome to Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin DLC. That's like 7 words. And this didn't save Security Breach, but it got kinda close. It made the Princess Quest ending canon. It made all the other endings things that Gregory just thought up and drew them. Of course, Gregory in this game is trapped in the Pizzaplex, and Cassie goes down throughout the Pizzaplex to save him, only to realize that's not Gregory, that's the Mimic, you know, from the books. He's in this game for some reason. Does this mean the books are canon? Well, for a little bit there, like I said, it was considered mostly canon as opposed to Frights, which was fiction. Frights fiction. The bad faith Mimic bad debates some people had in the fandom were like, why would they change the villain? Why would they just not keep Afton? Mind you, these were the same people that said Afton coming back was dumb. It was very, very bad faith. We kept on being this absolutely toxic community. You know, FizzNom got canceled, which was a good thing for the FNAF community, if I'm being completely honest with you. And the Fazbear Fanverse Initiative blew up in Scott's face, and Lady Fitzy, and all this stuff kept on blowing up after blowing up like C4. It was basically a minefield. It was the worst time in your life to be a Five Nights at Freddy's fan. And people were having such bad faith arguments about the books and if they were canon, if they're not canon, and why it was dumb if they were, and it was dumb if they weren't. And they were like, why is the Mimic here? The Mimic's dumb, but also they should have went back to Afton, but also Afton was dumb in Security Breach. It just shouldn't have went on, which I disagree with, because everything, man, it was just so full of just toxicity. And afterwards, there was this game called Help Wanted 2, which was good, but it just gave us questions answered to Ruin. You know, Cassie's dad, why Roxy had a different face on, all this stuff that was, you know, nagging at people, except for Freddy and his feet. Like, why did he have Prototype on his feet? That's still, I think it's still debated to this very day if that's actually Freddy or not. But after Help Wanted, the DLC, there was something released after Help Wanted 2, not Help Wanted DLC. There was DLC released for this game. And there were these puzzle pieces. And you could see this place called Murray's Costume Manor. And after you collect these puzzle pieces, you turn and you see this code and you type it into this van, and the Mexus system from Ruin comes out of this white van and it speeds off. What? It was just very confusing in help. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Wow. Crazy. Dad just called my sister a bitch. But anyway, it was very confusing for people that weren't paying attention to the books. It's like, what is Murray's costume manner? What is MCM? You know. But if people were reading, if you read the books, you would understand. Hey, wait a minute, that's from Tales from the Pizza Place. That's Edwin Murray. Why is that in this game? Well, it would all be answered with Secret of the Mimic. When this game came out, it answered a lot of questions, and it was like the sister location of the new era, just trying to explain everything and leaving you with some questions. It was a very good game, and it changed a lot of people, you know? It changed a lot of people until FNAF went like a year and a half without getting any new news, and people started being toxic again because they were having bad faith arguments about old lore that didn't matter anymore. They said Scott Cawthon should just tell us the lore at this point, which is not something that he should ever do, but it's just like not good. You know, it wasn't good. But I like to think that Secret of the Mimic changed people's opinion on the Mimic. You know, I think it was pretty good that about Secret of the Mimic. And speaking of Secret of the Mimic, you remember the blob that I mentioned? I think it's Fiona. You know, I think it's Mexus. You know, trying to fate Fiona. You know, because it's a tangle of wires and there's Fiona wires, and they made Mexus down there. So that's what I think. And I think Mexus is probably at least a version or an echo of Fiona. So that's what I think. Not a good word to say, everybody. But now we got Security Breach 2 on the horizon. And here's the question that everybody wants to know the answer to. Gavin, do you think Security Breach 2 will be better than Security Breach 1? Absolutely. I don't think you can make a game worse than Security Breach was. Do I hate the game? No, I can never hate Security Breach. I have the Security Breach poster. I platinum trophied the game twice. Once for the PS4 version and once for the PS5 version. I could never hate this game. I think there are some parts about it that are kind of fun, actually. You know, the collectathon part of it, collecting everything, pretty fun. And I just think the characters are pretty cool as well. But is this game good? No, it's not good. Is it even kind of fine? No, it's terrible. And I can like something while knowing it's terrible. It's like smoking when you know it's bad for you. I know that Security Breach is not a very good game, but that doesn't make it does it make me love it any less? Not really. I think Security Breach is this broken, messy game that has way too much going on in it. But do I think it's earned its forgiveness, its redemption? Yes. That's why I think Security Breach 2 is such a good idea. It's earned its redemption. It's earned its, forgiveness. Is it a good game even if Security Breach 2 comes out and explains absolutely everything from Security Breach 1? No, because it still came out as this buggy, glitchy mess. But it was fun while it lasted, Security Breach. And you'll still live on in the minds of FNAF fans everywhere as the one that destroyed everything in FNAF lore irreparably. I'll see you next time.